Scene 3. Develop a messianic sense of purpose. We're here to put a dent in the universe. Steve Jobs. New York's luxury Upper West Side apartment building in San Remo is located on 75th Street with commanding views of Central Park. Its most famous residents read like a who's who of contemporary culture. Tiger Woods, Demi Moore, Dustin Hoffman, Bono, and at one time a young man on a mission, Steve Jobs. In 1983, Jobs was aggressively courting then PepsiCo president John Sculley. Apple desperately wanted to bring in someone with Sculley's marketing and managing experience, but despite Steve's charm, Sculley failed to budge. The position would require that Sculley relocate his family to the West Coast, and it paid less than he wanted. One sentence would change everything. One sentence that would transform Apple, shift the trajectory of Sculley's career, and begin Jobs' amazing path from whiz kid to failure to hero and finally to legend. In his book Odyssey, Sculley recounts the conversation that would lead to his decision to take the job. The conversation also provided one of the most famous quotes in the history of corporate America. According to Sculley, we were on the balcony's west side facing the Hudson River when he, Jobs, finally asked me directly, "Are you going to come to Apple?" "Steve," I said, "I really love what you're doing. I'm excited by it. How could anyone not be captivated? But it just doesn't make any sense. Steve, I'd love to be an advisor to you, to help you in any way, but I don't think I can come to Apple." Sculley said. Jobs' head dropped. He paused and stared at the ground. Jobs then looked up and issued a challenge to Sculley that would haunt him. Jobs said, "Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugar water, or do you want a chance to change the world?" Sculley said it was as if someone delivered a stiff blow to his stomach. The reality distortion field. Sculley had witnessed what Apple's vice president Bud Tribble once described as Jobs' reality distortion field, an ability to convince anyone of practically anything. Many people cannot resist this magnetic pull and are willing to follow Jobs to the promised land, or at least to the next cool iPod. Few people can escape the Jobs' charisma, a magnetism steeped in passion for his products. Observers have said that there's something about the way Jobs talks, the enthusiasm that he conveys, that grabs everyone in the room and doesn't let go. Even journalists who should have built up an immunity to such gravitational forces cannot escape the influence. Wired.com editor Linda Coney interviewed Jobs' biographer Alan Deutschman, who described a meeting with Jobs. "He uses your first name very often. He looks directly in your eyes with that laser-like stare. He has these movie star eyes that are very hypnotic, but what really gets you is the way he talks. There is something about the rhythm of his speech and the incredible enthusiasm he conveys for whatever it is he's talking about that is just infectious." Do what you love. Deutschman said the Steve Jobs X factor is the way he talks. But what exactly is it about the way he talks that pulls you in? Jobs speaks with passion, enthusiasm, and energy. Jobs himself tells us where his passion comes from. You've got to find what you love. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. We all have a unique purpose. Some people, such as Jobs, identify that purpose from an early age. Others never do because they are caught up in catching up with the Joneses. One sure way to lose sight of your purpose is to chase money for the sake of chasing money. Jobs is a billionaire and an extraordinary communicator precisely because he followed his heart, his passion. The money he most certainly knew would come. Finding your core purpose. What is your core purpose? Once you find it, express it enthusiastically. One of the most profound experiences of my journalism career happened during an interview with Chris Gardner. Actor Will Smith played Gardner in the movie The Pursuit of Happiness. In the 80s, in that craziness, we see genius. I think you always had to be a little different to buy an Apple computer. I think the people who do buy them are the creative spirits in this world. They are the people who are not out just to get a job done. They're out to change the world. We make tools for those kinds of people. We are going to serve the people who have been buying our products since the beginning. A lot of times people think they're crazy, but in that craziness, we see genius, and those are the people we're making tools for. Steve Jobs. In the 80s, the real-life Gardner pursued an unpaid internship to become a stockbroker. He was homeless at the time, spending nights in the bathroom of an Oakland, California subway station. To make the situation even harder, Gardner took care of his 2-year-old son. The two slept together in the bathroom floor every morning. Gardner would put on the one suit he had, drop his son off at a very questionable daycare, and take his classes. Gardner finished top of his class, became a stockbroker, and earned many millions of dollars. For a Business Week column, I asked him, "Mr. Gardner, how did you find the strength to keep going?" His answer was so profound that I remember it to this day. Find something you love to do so much you can't wait for the sun to rise to do it all over again. In Built to Last Successful Habits of Visionary Companies, authors Jim Collins and Jerry Porras studied 18 leading companies. Their conclusion: individuals are inspired by core values and a sense of purpose beyond just making money. From his earliest interviews, it becomes clear that Jobs was more motivated by creating great products than by calculating how much money he would make at building those products. In a PBS documentary, Triumph of the Nerd, Jobs said, "I was worth over $1 million when I was 23, and over $10 million when I was 24, and over $100 million when I was 25, and it wasn't that important, because I never did it for the money. I never did it for the money." This phrase holds the secret between becoming an extraordinary presenter and one mired in mediocrity for the rest of your life. Jobs once said that being the richest man in the cemetery didn't matter to him. Rather, going to bed at night saying we've done something wonderful, that's what matters to me. Great presenters are passionate because they follow their hearts. Their conversations become platforms to share the passion. Malcolm Gladwell shares a fascinating observation in Outliers. He argues that most of the leaders who are responsible for the personal computing revolution were born in 1955. That's the magic year, he says. According to Gladwell, the chronology makes sense because the first mini-computer, the Altair, was introduced in 1975, marking one of the most important developments in the history of personal computers. He states, "If you were more than a few years out of college in 1975, then you belonged to the old paradigm. You had just bought a house, you're married, a baby is on the way. You're in no position to give up a good job and pension for some pie-in-the-sky $397 computer kit. Likewise, if you were too young, you would not be mature enough to participate in the revolution." Gladwell speculates that the ideal age of tech industry titans was around 20 or 21, those born in 1954 or 1955. Steve Jobs was born on February 24th, 1955. He was born at the right time and in the right neighborhood to take advantage of the moment. Gladwell points out that Jobs is one of an amazing number of technology leaders born in 1954 and 1955, including Bill Gates, Paul Allen, Steve Ballmer, Eric Schmidt, Scott McNealy, and others. Gladwell's conclusion is that these men became successful precisely because computers were not big money makers at the time. They were cool, and these men loved to tinker. The message, claims Gladwell, is to achieve success, do what you find interesting, do what you love, and follow your core purpose. As Job has said, your heart knows where it wants to be. The luckiest guys on the planet. On May 30, 2007, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates shared the stage in a rare joint appearance at the technology conference D, All Things Digital. Wall Street Journal columnist Walt Mossberg and Kara Swisher covered a variety of topics with the two tech titans. In response to a question about Bill Gates' second act as a philanthropist, Jobs credited Gates for making the world a better place because Gates' goal wasn't to be the richest guy in the cemetery. You know, I'm sure Bill was like me in this way. I mean, I grew up fairly middle class, lower middle class, and I never really cared much about money. And Apple was so successful early on in life that I was very lucky that I didn't have to care about money then. And so I have been able to focus on work and then later on my family. And I sort of took look at us as two of the luckiest guys on the planet because we found what we love to do. We were at the right place at the right time, and we've gotten to go to work every day with super bright people for 30 years and do what we love doing. And so it's hard to be happier than that. And so I don't think about legacy much. I just think about being able to get up every day and go and hang around these great people and hopefully create something that other people will love as much as we do. And if we can do that, that's great. Nowhere in that quote do you hear Jobs speak of wealth, stock options, or private planes. Those things are nice, but they don't motivate Jobs. His drive comes from doing what he loves, designing great products that people enjoy. Rally people to a better future. Donald Trump once remarked, "If you don't have passion, you have no energy, and if you don't have energy, you have nothing." It all starts with passion. Passion stirs the emotion of your listeners when you use it to paint a picture of a more meaningful world, a world that your customer or employees can play a part in creating. Marcus Buckingham interviewed thousands of employees who excelled at their jobs during his 17 years at the Gallup organization. After interviewing thousands of peak performers, he arrived at what he considers the single best definition of leadership. Great leaders rally people to a better future, he writes in The One Thing You Need to Know. According to Buckingham, a leader carries a vivid image in his or her head of what a future could be. Leaders are fascinated by the future. You are a leader if and only if you are restless for change, impatient for progress, and deeply dissatisfied with the status quo. He explains, as a leader, you are never satisfied with the present because in your head you can see a better future, and the friction between what is and what could be burns you, stirs you up, propels you forward. This is leadership. Jobs' vision must have certainly burned him, stirred him, and propelled him forward. Jobs once told John Scully he dreamed that every person in the world would own an Apple computer. But Jobs did not stop there. He shared that dream with all who would listen. True evangelists are driven by a messianic zeal to create new experiences. It was characteristic of Steve to speak in both vivid and sweeping language, writes Scully. What we want to do, Steve Jobs explained, is to change the way people use computers in the world. We've got some incredible ideas that will revolutionize the way people use computers. Apple is going to be the most important computer company in the world, far more important than IBM. Jobs was never motivated to build computers. Instead, he had a burning desire to create tools to unleash human potential. Once you understand the difference, you'll understand what sparked his famous reality distortion field. An incredible journey. Apple was this incredible journey. I mean, we did some amazing things here. The things that bound us together at Apple was the ability to make things that were going to change the world. That was very important. We were all pretty young. The average age in the company was mid to late 20s. Hardly anybody had families at the beginning, and we all worked like maniacs. And the greatest joy was that we felt we were fashioning collective works of art, much like 20th century physics, something important that would last, that people contributed to and then could give to more people. The amplification factor was very large. Steve Jobs. What computers and coffee had in common. Lee Clow, chairman of TBWA, the agency behind some of Apple's most notable ad campaigns, once said of Jobs, "From the time he was a kid, Steve thought his products could change the world." That's the key to understanding Jobs. His charisma is a result of a grand but strikingly simple vision to make the world a better place. Jobs convinced his programmers that they were changing the world together, making a moral choice against Microsoft and making people's lives better. For example, Jobs gave an interview to Rolling Stone in 2003 in which he talked about the iPod. The MP3 player was not simply a music gadget, but much more. According to Jobs, music is really being reinvented in this digital age, and that is bringing it back into people's lives. It's a wonderful thing, and in our own small way, that's how we're going to make the world a better place. Where some people see an iPod as a music player, Jobs sees a world in which people can easily access their favorite songs and carry the music along with them wherever they go, enriching their lives. Jobs reminds me of another business leader whom I had the pleasure of meeting, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz. Prior to our interview, I read his book, Pour Your Heart Into It. Schultz is passionate about what he does. In fact, the word passion appears on nearly every page, but it soon became clear that he's not as passionate about coffee as he is about the people, the baristas who make the Starbucks experience what it is. You see, Schultz's core vision was not to make a great cup of coffee. It was much bigger. Schultz would create an experience, a third place between work and home, where people would feel comfortable gathering. He would build a company that treats people with dignity and respect. Those happy employees would in turn provide a level of customer service that would be seen as a gold standard in the industry. When I reviewed the transcripts from my time with Schultz, I was struck by the fact that the word coffee rarely appeared. Schultz's vision had little to do with coffee and everything to do with the experience Starbucks offers. Some managers are uncomfortable with expressing emotion about their dreams, but it's the passion and emotion that will attract and motivate others. Bright Collins and Porras. Communicators such as Steve Jobs and Howard Schultz are passionate about how their products improve their lives of their customers. They're not afraid to express it. Coffee, computers, iPods, it doesn't matter. What matters is that they are motivated by a vision to change the world, to leave a dent in the universe. This book is filled with techniques to help you sell your ideas more successfully, but no technique can make up for a lack of passion for your service, product, company, or cause. The secret is to identify what it is you're truly passionate about. More often than not, it's not the widget, but how the widget will improve the lives of your customers. Here is an excerpt from an interview Jobs gave Wired magazine in 1996. Design is funny. Design is a funny word. Some people think design means how it looks, but of course, if you dig deeper, it's really how it works. The design of the Mac wasn't that what it looked like, although that was part of it. Primarily, it was how it worked. To design something really well, you have to get it. You have to really grok what it's all about. It takes a passionate commitment to really thoroughly understand something, chew it up, not just quickly swallow it. Most people don't take the time to do that. Yes, grok is the word Jobs used. Just as Howard Schultz isn't passionate about the product itself, coffee, Jobs isn't passionate about hardware. He's passionate about how design enables something to work more beautifully. Think different. Los Angeles ad agency TBWA Chad Day created an Apple television and print advertising campaign that turned into one of the most famous campaigns in corporate history. Think Different debuted on September 28, 1997 and became an instant classic. As black and white images of famous iconoclasts filled the screen, Albert Einstein, Martin Luther King, Richard Branson, John Lennon, Amelia Earhart, Muhammad Ali, Lucille Ball, Bob Dylan, and others, actors Richard Dreyfuss voices the narration. Here's to crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square hole, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things, they push the human race forward. And while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. The campaign won a ton of awards, became a cult favorite, and lasted 5 years, which is an eternity in the life cycle of ad campaigns. The campaign reinvigorated the public's appetite for all things Apple, including an interest in one of the most influential iconoclasts in the computer world, Steve Jobs himself. In the second coming of Steve Jobs, Alan Deutschman, who, as mentioned earlier, was pulled into Jobs' reality distortion field, describes a meeting between Jobs and Newsweek's Katie Hafner, the first outsider to see the new Think Different ads. According to Deutschman, Hafner arrived at Apple's headquarters on a Friday morning and waited a long time for Jobs to show up. Finally, he emerged. His chin was covered by stubble. He was exhausted from having stayed up all night editing footage for the Think Different television spot. The creative directors at Chad Day would send him video clips over a satellite connection, and he would say yes or no. Now the montage was finally complete. Steve sat with Katie and they watched the commercial. Steve was crying. That's what I love about him, Katie recalls. It wasn't trumped up. Steve was genuinely moved by that stupid ad. Those ads touched Jobs deeply because they reflect everything that pushed Jobs to innovate, excel, and succeed. He was himself in the faces of those famous people who advanced the human race and changed the world. As a journalist, I learned that everyone has a story to tell. I realized we're not all creating computers that will change the way people live, work, play, and learn. Notwithstanding The fact is that most of us are selling a product or working on a project that has some benefit to the lives of our customers. Whether you work in agriculture, automobiles, technology, finance, or any number of other industries, you have a magnificent story to tell. Dig deep to identify that which you are most passionate about. Once you do, share that enthusiasm with your listeners. People want to be moved and inspired, and they want to believe in something. Make them believe in you. There is an old Wayne Gretzky quote that I love. Steve Jobs once said, "I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been." We've always tried to do that at Apple since the very, very beginning, and we always will. Director's notes. Dig deep to identify your true passion. Ask yourself, what am I really selling? Here's a hint. It's not the widget, but what the widget can do to improve the lives of your customers. What you're selling is the dream of a better life. Once you identify your true passion, share it with gusto. Develop a personal, passionate statement. In one sentence, tell your prospects why you are genuinely excited about working with them. Your passion statement will be remembered long after your company's mission statement is forgotten. If you want to be an inspiring speaker but you are not doing what you love, consider a change. After interviewing thousands of successful leaders, I can tell you that while it's possible to be financially successful in a job you hate, you will never be considered an inspiring communicator. Passion is a messianic zeal to make the world a better place, makes all the difference.